Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm excited to share a couple of updates with these live shows that we have going on. Sponsors have loaded us up with gear to give away to you, our attendees. So the biggest prize is Channel Islands gave us a Michael February fish to give away to one lucky attendee at Charleston, South Carolina. Vayer Watches is going to be sending us a bunch of watches for both shows, Jacksonville Beach and Charleston. NVS Fins is giving us fins. Real Water Sports sent care packages. And then Marshwear has also been added to our list of sponsors. Marshwear is a local Charleston-based clothing company. They've grown kind of into a national brand in recent years, but they started out with roots in surfing and fishing, and they are just a half a mile. Their headquarters is just a half a mile from our venue at Head High Studios. So it's a logical fit. They've given us a bunch of clothing and gear to give to you. So again, dates for these two shows: Jacksonville Beach, Florida, with Justin Quintal. That's going to be on Wednesday, June 11th. And then the following night, Thursday, June 12th, in Charleston, South Carolina, with Cam Richards. And then his father, Kelly Richards, is also joining us on stage. Trivia, prizes, stories, reviewing footage with the boys, and discussing their boards. So tons of free gear for you. Chaz Smith and I are going to be hosting both nights. Tickets are only $25. You can find a link to those shows in the caption down below on YouTube or on surfsplendorpodcast.com or on my Instagram account at surfsplendor. I really hope to meet you. That Channel Islands Mike February fish, we've got one on stage for you to check out on display, but then the winner will get one custom made to their specs. So super duper cool. Hope to meet you guys. And then moving on into today's show, we have a true icon of the surf world as our guest today. I was lucky enough to be seated right next to him at a dinner last month where we got to reconnect for the first time in about a decade. People will often introduce him as the 1977 world champion. They'll also acknowledge the great work that he's doing over the last 15 years by investing in our youth through the message that he's sharing of the code. Those are accolades that are worthy of discussion, but the contributions that he has made to tube riding may be the most pervasive in influence in the surf world. While the skill was honed at South Africa's Bay of Plenty, they were elevated and then shared with the world at Backdoor and Pipeline. Frontside, he was among the first to pump the board and weave through the tube. The boards had just gotten shorter and more maneuverable, and Tomson used this to take off later and deeper and not just ride the tube, but actually surf in the tube. And then backside, he developed early versions of the tripod stance, using his arm to stabilize the outside rail, something that's commonly used now, known as the pig dog stance. The efficacy of these techniques were proven with his 1975 Pipe Masters title. He took that win over 5 goofy footers in the final, one of whom was Jerry Lopez himself. So go and check out the era-defining film Free Ride to see more footage of what I'm talking about. But Shaun spoke to Trax magazine about those winters on the North Shore, and he said, quote, "I remember certain tubes where I was so in control of my body and my mind that it actually felt as though I was controlling the wave itself," end quote. Surfing Life magazine named Shaun as the all-time world's best tube rider in 1991. And we actually don't discuss tube riding in this conversation, so I wanted to make sure that I mention it here in the intro. But beyond those accolades, beyond his competitive success, he has had a super long and impressive career that spans multiple industries and decades. Shaun Tomson was a Calvin Klein model. He's a serial entrepreneur. He went back to college in the mid-90s and got a degree in business finance. He's been a film producer. He was the vice president at the ASP in the early 90s. He's appeared on The Merv Griffin Show and Good Morning America. He's authored multiple books. He won the Surfer Magazine Reader Poll Awards in 1978. He was inducted into the South African Sports Hall of Fame the same year, and he was that country's Sportsman of the Year. He was inducted in the Jewish Sports Hall of Fame in 1995, and then the Huntington Beach Walk of Fame in 1997. He's also being honored at the Waterman's Ball this year, I think next month, and receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award there. Robert Bartholomew is flying out to present that award to Shaun, And then Shaun and Rabbit are going to grab Peter Townend and Ian Cairns, and they're going to tour their film Bustin' Down the Door on the East Coast and West Coast. So if you want to meet Shaun and the crew, go to bustindownthedoorfilm.com to see the dates and locations. It actually starts tomorrow, May 29th in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and then ends at Bird Surf Shed in San Diego on June 19th. And then lastly, Shaun was the very first ambassador for the Surfrider Foundation 40 years ago in 1984, and he's remained a loyal and vocal member. My work here on Surf Splendor wouldn't be possible without Surfrider, so I just want to thank Shaun and thank Surfrider themselves. Surfrider.org is where you go to become a member and support their good work. And then Veyer Watches is where you can also go to support us. You could save yourself 15% on an off of an American assembled waterproof guaranteed timepiece. Go to veyerwatches.com/surfsplendor to do that. And then realwatersports.com is our retail partner for anything that you need for any water sport. Over 1,500 surfboards in inventory and board bags, beach towels, anything you need for the water, realwatersports.com. Okay, without any further ado, my name is David Scales, as you know, for Surf Splendor, and here is my conversation with the distinguished and inspirational Shaun Tomson. I hope that you enjoy.
Surf Splendor.
I was curious, how recent was that footage that you posted on Instagram of J-Bay?
Oh, that was a few years back. That was sure. I don't know. It was about maybe 7 years ago. Some time ago, yeah.
You're surfing good.
Thank you. No, it's funny, when I retired from surfing, it was different to now. Your career ended when you stopped competing. Today, people have these long careers in which they use social media to sort of extend the longevity of their surf careers. I mean, I continued to surf really, really hard, and even then, at that time, I thought that in those days they didn't give wild cards to like so-called sort of icons or legends, especially if you weren't sponsored by different companies. The heritage companies. If they're having an event at Billabong, the only person that would get in the event on a wild card would be Marco Calupo and other sponsored surfers. I was sort of on my own, so I didn't get those wild cards. But my surfing was at a high level. I thought I loved it. I was still very passionate about it, and even though I got sort of heavily into other things, I'm still very passionate about my surfing. I remember Kelly coming up to me during that session at J-Bay and said, "Hey, Shaun, I've never seen anyone that's so obsessed, that surfs so much." He said, "What do you surf 8 hours a day?" I said, "Yes, I do."
I'm wondering if you're better off retiring from the competitive surfing at a reasonable age to revitalize your Stoke for the act of surfing itself. Like if you're solely singularly focused on it, and you're traveling the world and you're chasing points and all that sort of stuff, if it zaps some of the joy and the passion.
I don't think it does at all. For me, the competitive aspect wasn't the integral component of my surfing. It was always like the sideline, to be able to create an industry, to create a stream of income, to to build something. But the surfing itself, that core burning obsession, was never affected by competition. And I think there's you look to the tour today, and I think if there was one person who was most like me on the tour, that would be Geordie Smith. Power, big, strong guy, loves powerful waves, a guy who's super stoked, who maybe surfs more than anyone else on the tour. And he put out a video a number of months back of surfing these unbelievable waves in South Africa. So he's a guy who's still surfing at an unbelievably high level, super stoked, and he's bringing the competitive results. I think over the next day he might be number one in the world again. I don't think he's ever been, and he's 38 years old. I don't think he's ever been as rated and as competitive even in his youth, as he and as respected as he is now. So I think the burning obsession in the Stoke, um, and having revitalized surfing can still live in the competitive environment.
I guess the other thought that I had was just developing diversified interests in life sometimes makes the surfing more interesting. Like John sailing the world right now and taking a little bit of a competitive break. I just feel like even if you're not, one might think that surfing as much as possible would advance your surfing, but I think sometimes taking a break and having other inputs in your life develops the surfing too.
Absolutely. I mean, I had strong interests when I was on the tour. I mean, I was at university when I was on the tour studying economics and business administration. I was like a voracious reader. I started Instinct when I was 22 years old. I mean, I was sponsoring and paying Tom Carroll and gunning with him to win the world title, and Barton Lynch and a whole host of other guys, and being out there at the trade shows and going around the East Coast promoting and meeting kids and meeting dealers. So so I had a lot of diversified interests, and perhaps that um, that made the time in the water special and made
Yeah.
the time in the water meaningful. And for me, like I competed in my first pro contest in 1969, and I competed in my last in 1990. And I never ever thought of surfing as practice ever. Never, ever. It was never practice. I'm going out there to have a practice. It was, I'm going to go out there and just blast. I'm going to go out there and have a great time. I'm going to go out there and push it to the limits. And even until a few years ago, every wave I rode it to the absolute best of my ability because I loved it. I loved that challenge. I love that. I love giving it the power, giving it the force. Uh, and I suppose, I had a good long career, and I thought I did lots of different things with boards and did lots of different things with creative focus and creative attack and surfing. And it was always fresh, man, always super, super fresh.
Are there any ways that your surfing is still improving? Or if not the surfing itself, maybe your surf experience?
I think the surfing improvement stops at about 64. It's very hard just from a physical perspective after 64. I mean, I think still at 64, I'm surfing really good. Um, and then it's kind of like you hit a wall, but the surfing experience is still as meaningful now. I can go out there and ride a little 4 foot wave, and the sun's out, and there's maybe 3 or 4 guys in the water. I can have a beautiful, enriching surfing experience that is as meaningful to me as dropping into a 10 foot wave at backdoor. Okay, maybe you're not going to have that extreme emotion and that kind of fear tinged with exhilaration, but I think you can still have that meaningful surf experience. And I remember when I was on the tour and started hitting it hard and started to be successful when I was like a teenager, I'd look at guys like Ricky Gregg. And this guy, he was like an oceanographer. He was an esteemed oceanographer, would be out there charging sunset, like 15-foot sunset. And I'm going, wow, I'd love to be like Ricky Gregg one day. And he's 28. And I thought 28 back then was like ancient. Uh, but I think that you can maintain that connectivity. You can maintain that energy. You can maintain that passionate connection, not just to the ocean, but to the art of surfing itself. And it becomes less man, I'm going to give it everything I've got to, I'm going to give it what I've got.
Well, I'm shocked to hear you say 64 because that would indicate that you were actively improving at 63.
Yeah, I was improving. I
Amazing.
mean, I could have beaten myself. I could have beaten my world champion self at 64 years old. I couldn't do it now, but I could have then. And you saw that footage, JB. There's no way that anyone on a single fin could surf like that back then. the boards just became way faster. The boards are so fast today. The techniques have become so developed. Just remember back in like 75, 76, 77, when I was kind of changing tube riding and starting to ride inside the tube. No one else was doing it. I was the Lone Ranger out there. I was the only guy. And there weren't that many of the top pros that were really good tube riders. I mean, you had, you had the whole Rabbit PT crew from the Gold Coast, that grew up on those Gold Coast. And, they had their like super subtle tube riding approach. And then spinning off, I suppose, from what I did, you had Tom Carroll and you had Dane and that crew, more the power driving approach. But today, you can go on social and you can see a 13-year-old kid getting a 15-second barrel ride. You can see someone that's been surfing and I watched something the other day. This kid looks like he'd been surfing like a year, doing the highest aerial I had ever seen. It looked like he was like 20 foot up. And I think the kid had been surfing like a year or 2 years. So the level of improvement, the level of advancement today, and there's a number of things. One is the boards. Two is just the connectivity, that everyone sees what the hottest surfer in the world did 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So the level just rises to that level. And that's why there's so much equivalency on the pro tour today, and a lot of homogeneity on the tour. A lot of guys, it's very hard to differentiate their styles because I think they're all so connected by this web of greatness, and they've seen just great surfing in a certain way. I watched the Margaret River yesterday, and it's like everyone's trying to surf like Ethan Ewing.
Mm.
It's really interesting, and they're making the same mistakes that he makes. They're doing the single double pump before the big turn. That's the fundamental. Like I love to watch the technical aspect, and that's the fundamental. You have to tell me, how can Ethan Ewing improve? Stop the double pump turn, do the single turn. I mean, his surfing's insane. He's a fantastic surfer, but and I'm surprised none of his coaches have said, "Hey, Ethan, man, you would just magnify the power." But everyone is so connected that they're even making the same mistakes.
That's so interesting.
Not to criticize Ethan Ewing, because the guy's an unbelievable surfer, but it's like I always took advice, and sometimes you throw advice to the curb. But I mean, I do love the way he surfs, but I just think like, hey, Ethan, stop the double bum.
Well, yeah, you have authority. You're welcome to give criticism. I'm sure anybody would be happy to receive criticism from you.
It's not criticism, it's advice.
Well, the other thing is
It's warm advice.
he lost his heat to Crosby Colapinto. So
Absolutely. And Crosby, talk about a duplication of how Ethan surfs. I
yeah,
mean, I rest my case, baby. Exactly. He is surfing. Crosby is like, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, in his early days, Geordie Smith was heavily influenced by Joel Parkinson. And then when someone wins, then they go on their own way. And certainly all of us have had these powerful influences in our setting. But when you win, when you first crack it, and Crosby hasn't cracked it yet, but when you first crack it, you have that confidence and you come into your own and you go your own way.
I'm going to go back to the beginning. I know obviously everybody, I mean, you're synonymous with South Africa, but I really don't know anything about your childhood and your upbringing. And even that cover shot on that Claudia Blementhal's recent book, Surfer Stories, I had never seen that photo before. Can you tell me about where exactly you grew up and how it was that you discovered surfing?
Sure. So I grew up in Durban, South Africa. It's a seaside town. Back then, I think it was a couple of million people. My father was a champion swimmer in his youth. He was going on to he was Olympic standard. And after he volunteered for the Second World War, he was a tail gunner bombing the fascists and the Nazis in Italy and North Africa. My mom grew up on the island of Malta. It was the most heavily bombed place in the history of the world. She endured 3,600 air raids. The whole population was awarded the George Cross, which is the civilian equivalent of the Victoria Cross for bravery. Spent years in underground shelters. Eventually, it was a British seaport, a strategic seaport in the Mediterranean. So as soon as war was declared, they started bombing the hell out of it. She ended up and was evacuated to South Africa. My dad was a champion swimmer. Then came back from the war, started training for the London Olympics, the 48 Olympics in London, and there was a surfer. He was out there. They used to surf on these little wooden boards, and was very badly attacked by a shark. Yeah, I've got an article that I often read from the front page of the paper that he wrote. It was an ideal day for surfing and for sharks. So the shark hit him really hard, the Zambezi, and it just ripped his right arm apart from the shoulder to the wrist. So that was the end of his swimming career. But my dad never lost his love for the ocean. And he took me, my earliest memories of being on the beach with my mom and dad, they fell in love, got married. And my earliest memories of him taking me down to the water and teaching me how to surf and telling me about the rip tides and the currents and teaching me how to swim. So the beach was a part of my life. I started surfing at 9. My dad bought me a little 4'6" board, bought my cousin Michael a board, my brother, and we all started surfing on the same day. And then it was just sort of a natural evolution. We started at this amazing place called the Bay of Plenty, and there was a whole group of us kids. My dad was like the godfather of the beach, and we all started surfing together, and it was just a super fun vibe. We all started competing together. They had quite an active competitive situation. My dad, loved to be involved. He was the chairman of the Natal. Our state was called Natal Surfing Association. So we were these hot rats that surfed at the Bay of Plenty. We were part of the Bay Surf Club, they called it. And then a big turning point for me in my surfing was for my bar mitzvah. I'm Jewish. My dad took me to Hawaii for my bar mitzvah present. So my dad loved Hawaii. Juka Hanamoku, the famous swimmer and surfer, was his hero, his swimming hero. And after my dad had been attacked by the shark, his father flew him to San Francisco to the world's leading hand surgeon, because his hand was clenched up from the shark attack, ripped out his biceps and him. And he had surgery, and then he recuperated in Hawaii, stayed in the Royal Hawaiian, and met all the Kahanamokus, his heroes, and loved Hawaii. From then on, he had this love affair Hawaii. I mean, we were the only house, I think, back then in South Africa where your shoes had to sit outside when you came into the house. And I always wondered, where did my dad get this from? So he took me to Hawaii in 1969. We stopped off first in Australia and met up with Midget Farrelly. In 1969, my father created the world's first pro surfing contest. The first pro surfing contest in the world was the Gunston 500 in South Africa, which was actually won by Gavin Rudolph. My dad had bought a struggling surfboard business it was called Wetland Surfboards. They did a licensing deal with Midget, bought Midget Farrelly out to do a surfing exhibition, and there was like 30,000 people on the beach. And so created this pro contest. It was won by Gavin Rudolph, South African, amazing South African surfer. So they licensed the Midget's boards, and then we flew over to flew over to Australia, to Sydney on the way to Hawaii, picked up boards from Midget. He shaped me boards for Hawaii, the speed board, and then this little beautiful double ender that was on the cover of Claudia's book. And then we ended up in Hawaii, and that ended up being one of the biggest winters of all time. We stayed right on the point at Makaha. We stayed on the top floor of this condo complex, and Albie Felsen and Batty Trelaw came over for a few weeks to film, and we were all together, and my dad was filming and Albie was filming, and I'd been out earlier in the day when Greg Knoll got that mega ride. It was supposedly the biggest wave ever ridden in, and I'd been out earlier in the day with Rolf Arness and Randy Rarick and Keith Paul and all these guys. So, at a young age, I was sort of exposed to, some of these top surfers in the world came back to South Africa, and now I had a lot of confidence. I nearly drowned out there at Makaha in this mega surf, but I made it, and it gave me so much confidence. And then from then on, I had a good, strong career. I won my first major pro when I was doing the army. I had to spend a year in the army. I was a rifleman, and I was 17 when I won my first contest, the Gunston 500, which was one of the biggest events in the world back then. We used to have 40,000 people on the beach. It was madness. And then from then on, I just started doing well. I won my first major event in Hawaii in 1975. It was the world's richest contest then. I won like $5,500, which was huge then. February 75, I was 19. And from then on, I went on the tour. I was studying at university at the same time and competing, which was quite hard, but it was fun. And then suddenly I was on the cover of the mags. It was fun. Getting sponsorships, writing letters to O'Neill. Man, I'm on the cover of all these surfing magazines wearing your vest. I need to be paid, and that's how it all started.
What did your dad do professionally after the war?
So my dad's father had been a successful businessman, owned a number of properties, and they had a body repair shop. It was called Tomson's Sheet Metal. It's a classic immigrant story. He had come out to escape the pogroms, the anti-Semitism in Latvia. A lot of Jews came out to South Africa from Lithuania and Latvia at the turn of the century. Came out with nothing and started selling metal and built up into successful businesses. So my father retired at a very young age.
Okay.
He built a beach buggy at the sheet metal works, and would pick us up from school every day, only when the surf was good. Otherwise, we'd catch the bus home. And so he was very integral in the development of my career and in the career of many other surfers. My cousin Michael, every single pro surfer from Durban, every single top surfer from Durban, my dad had a fundamental influence on their growth and development. He was a very positive guy, a very honorable guy, a guy who really understood the essence of competition, the honor associated with competition. He would say to me, "Hey, Shaun, hey, son, you have to realize winning is easy, but losing is hard. And when you lose like a man," he would say to me. There's nothing sexist in that, but just, you got to lose. And he would say, "The judge's decision is inscribed in stone. Never complain about a judge's decision." He says, "Don't cry. And when a competitor comes in after a heat, whether you won or lost, you walk up, you shake their hand, and you squeeze it hard, and you look into their eyes, and you let them know you're there." These are just basic sort of fundamental building blocks of character. And, he was really instrumental in helping me, as was my mom. My mom was a survivor, like I said. She was a super optimistic, hopeful person, a person who believed in prayer. She believed in religion. She believed in God. So I think, from my mom, I got faith and hope. From my dad, I got determination, honor, integrity, commitment. I was lucky. I had great parents. I loved them. They loved me. We had a beautiful relationship. There was luckily, in my life, there was no dysfunction. Never ever had a fight with my brother and sister, even to this day. My mother would say, I lost my mom a couple of years ago. She'd say, "There's no fighting between your brother and sister in this house. This is how wars are started." She was a very nice and kind person. Yeah, I was lucky. I had a great upbringing.
Well, I was kind of curious about how, surfing was happening on a global stage in Hawaii in that era and elsewhere, Australia, California, but how somebody from South Africa ends up in those places and competes and has the amount of success and influence that you did. But it sounds like it was your father. I mean, obviously, him having the Gunston there is now bringing people to South Africa as well. So you're exposed to the world stage. But it also sounds like he was bringing you to the world stage, which at that time, just financially seemed like a stop point to me, you know?
Yeah, I would never ever have succeeded without my dad's support and encouragement. And I got to say, I see a lot of young surfers, and they are driven parents. And you know what they're doing? They're driving their young people away from surfing. Driven parents is not the way to be if you want your child to succeed. This isn't my observation and observation of many young surfers around the world. Mark Richards, 4 times world champion, his mom and dad played, and especially his dad, a fundamental role in his competitive success. And neither my dad nor his dad was out there with a flag telling him, you know, paddle on the inside, paddle on the outside, go left, go right, do this, do that. My dad never ever chastised me after a loss. He congratulated me after a win, but it was always in perspective, and humility and being humble was very, very important, um, to my father. Boastful behavior just wasn't part of the program. But he was very kind and encouraging in his way. And his way with other young surfers as well. If a surfer had no money, needed a board, my dad would buy him a board. If there was a function and the kid didn't have smart clothes that my dad would buy him. And he wouldn't tell anyone. He would just do it. And years ago, people would come up to me and say, "Yeah, I've got to tell you, I can't believe how much confidence your dad gave me." He would stand on the beach, watch us with his binoculars. And every time we'd come in, he would say, he would give people words of encouragement and talk about their surfing. And everyone knew that it was like a competition out there. We all wanted to impress my dad. So fundamental. And, in later life, I have, especially after I lost my son and I went down a different path in my life of how to help people find their purpose through the values of surfing. And I went back to university, I went back to grad school like a decade ago to study leadership, to study the art and influence of inspiration. And my dad was like this leader and led through kindness, led through encouragement, the antithesis of the dictatorial leadership that we see in the world today.
Did he ever talk about
Dictatorial. I'm thinking about director and dictator. Yeah, maybe
yeah,
they should be merged.
did he ever talk about the shark attack
No,
and the trauma?
he never ever spoke about it. He never ever behaved like he was disabled in one way. I asked him about it. He said, I said, Daddy, what happened to the shark? He said, I was really lucky. The shark died of blood poisoning. That's 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 the only discussion I had. I know the shark died of blood poisoning. It was like that gate, that door had been shut. And yeah, he would, like, if a person got attacked by a shark, my dad would be the first person on the phone to phone them up and give them words of encouragement and go and see them if they were in the hospital. Um, he was very concerned. He was very optimistic and positive about life. And, we never thought of him as having any form of disability. I mean, he couldn't use his right arm because of the attack, but he never let it hold him back. And it's wonderful, I think, wonderful role model. I hate to use that word role model because it's like it's not real, but he was a wonderful inspiration to, I think, people that have had something go wrong in their lives. And everyone has something go wrong in their lives. Some people just are victims. Some nation states are built on victimhood. Um, but he was so positive in his life and had so much energy and so much mojo and just loved life, loved to enjoy life.
I think of you as being somebody who's resilient, just because of how radically, your mission and directive has changed due to a loss. And so I was going to ask you what you attribute your resilience to, but it sounds like I don't know if there's a better answer than your mom and dad. They seem like they're the examples of it.
Absolute wonderful examples. My mom enduring 3,600 air raids, 2 direct hits, and just being a woman of faith, hope, and prayer. Um, she would say, you can pray anytime. She said, God's like a good friend. When you knock on the door, he's always at home. Like homespun, but powerful philosophies. And my father, just by actions, words are important. And I speak to hundreds of thousands of people, and I tell them how important words are. Words are the precursor to action. But like, here I am, 17 years old. I'm in the army, managed to get 3 weeks off. I'm competing in the Gunston 500, one of the biggest events in the world. And they got this huge tower on the beach, and there's got to be 30 to 40,000 people there. And there's 6 finalists are up on the podium, and I know I've done well. I'm in the finals, I've got top surfers there. And my dad, they have this big tower on the beach where all the judges are. My dad started the contest. So he's in the tower, and I know he knows the results because it wasn't instantaneous results. Everyone get on the stage, the crowd would gather around, it'd be the drama. And so I look up at my dad, the tower. Now here I am, this is my chance, this is my chance to win my first pro of my life. I look up at him and I go like, Dad, how have I done? Mouthing the words, how have I done? And he goes like this, he gives me the Roman emperor thumbs down. I go, shit, I'm so bummed out now. And then they start announcing the results, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, first place, Shaun Tomson. I'm stoked. And I look at my dad, he is beside himself with laughter. He is hitting his knee with laughter. And, here's a big joke, sir. But for me, it was like a big lesson. Winning's super important, but it's not everything. It's not as important as you think it is. So he kept the win in perspective. Yeah, great influences. They were great influences. They gave me so much respect. I gave them so much respect. And, when I see young people and, they're having beefs with their parents, and I go, man, make it right. Do what you can, make it right. Because you're only going to have one set. Just make it right.
Mm.
Make it right.
Well, in addition to resilience, I also have always thought of you as being really positive. Like I never hear you just radiate positivity as a kind of state of being, but I also never hear you speak cynically about other people or things. Do you think that that positivity is it a choice or is it just your natural state?
I think positivity is a choice. There's an amazing book, um, and I'm sure you've read it. Everyone should read this book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It was written by a Viennese psychiatrist who was incarcerated uh, during the Holocaust in Auschwitz. And he writes about hope, and he writes about how attitude is our fundamental choice in life. That's it. Attitude is your fundamental choice in life. And I talk and I've studied choice. And choice is fundamental when I talk to hundreds of thousands of all sorts of people, young people, people in rehab clinics, people in prisons, Fortune 500 companies. And I try to help people motivate and find the power to make a positive choice, to make the right choice. And everyone writes their code, I call it. It came from surfing. It's called Surface Code, 12 lines. Every line begins with how well I wrote it. Glenn Henning asked me to inspire a group of kids that were coming down to Rincon, because Rincon was faced with a big environmental problem, and he wanted me to inspire them. And he was getting the media there and the city officials there. And we wanted to create sort of this wave of empowerment and inspiration and perhaps get support for this problem. So I wrote Surface Code. I wrote my code, 12 lines, every line beginning with I will, just as a tool to inspire these kids. And then it eventually developed into a book. And then I started talking about the book. And then I started asking people to write their own codes. 12 lines, every line begins with I will, write it in 15 minutes. And it's a remarkable transformational process. And it can really help people find the power of purpose, of committed intention to create something meaningful for oneself and for others. You find this power to make a positive choice, to create a positive attitude for yourself, to be a force of good or force of evil. You've got the choice. And yes, it was very affected by what I had to go through when I lost my beautiful son. And my son played a dangerous game that he heard about at school called the choking game. Who knows whether it was peer pressure, and we'll never really know why did he do it, why, all the kids were doing it. And so the first time I asked students to write their code, I was just talking to them about my new book, Surface Code, that I did with Patrick Moser. This was about 20 years ago. I said, Surface Code's my code. I wrote it. I will always paddle back out. I mean, talk about resilience and perseverance. That's the metaphor. I'll never turn my back on the ocean. I think of my dad, passion, connectivity to the ocean, even though he had that terrible shark attack. And the first line I ever got back, how about this? First line of code I ever got back from a young girl, from a young person, was I will be myself. And I thought, wow, that is so profound. This young girl was writing, I'll be myself. And it really took me to my boy and the choice that he made. And I thought, wow, this is a good mission to get people to write their code, to find their power, find their purpose, find their path. And when I talk to people, there's no bullshit. It's straight authenticity. And there's so much bullshit in the world. And I like to think that when I tell people about the code, and they fill that code with their power, and it comes time to make a decision, that maybe they'll take the positive path. And maybe the code has helped them. And where'd the code come from? Code came from surfing. Where did surfing come from? Surfing came from my mom and dad. So it's just this beautiful connectivity. And like a fundamental problem in our world today is disconnectivity. Gallup did a study recently of 1.2 million people around the world. Fundamental problem in business, they call it disengagement. It's disconnectivity. Disconnectivity to the fundamental purpose of the business, to your purpose in your life, to your friends and peers that you work with, to your workplace. So how can we bring people together? I get people to write their code. That's step one. Step two is when they share their code. They stand up and they read it. Or they stand up and they text it to me and it comes across PowerPoint. Or it comes across, if I've got a few thousand people on a live stream, all these amazing words. I will do what I say I will do. I'll be kinder. I'll make change. I'll spend more time with my child. I'll be kinder to my husband. I mean, people write amazing words. So now you can bring people together. So you can see my mission is really simple, man. Create this positive wave of hope and purpose around the world through the values of Surface Code, through the values of surfing. Surfing is powerful. Surfing has got unbelievable power to create change, to bring people together, and to help people find their purpose, man, find their mission.
I wonder what that girl's up to today who said, I will be myself.
She got a ride, I believe she got a ride to LSU, and she came up to me at an event and just thanked me. And I'll tell you what, David, I get these letters from people. It's just so touching to know that you know, when you give of yourself like I do when I do these presentations. Okay, yeah, the big companies do, you know, they pay me nicely, and every time I do a paid event, I do a free event. I call it double shaka. I love it. So sometimes the company will nominate, sometimes I'll just do it for school, rehab, clinic, jail, whatever. But I found that you know, when you give, the real recipient of what you're giving is yourself. I mean, yes, you can help people, but it makes you feel like you've done something good for humanity. And you know, I'll tell you what's really interesting. So I've read hundreds of thousands, maybe more, lines of code that people have written. I capture the data. 12 lines, every line begins with "I will." Everyone's got like 12 to 15 minutes to write their code. And while everyone writes different words, we only write 2 lines of code, which in some ways represents the ultimate purpose of our lives. So I'm talking observation here. I'm not talking deduction, I'm talking observation. So people write, I will be better in one way or another. You know, I will be kinder, I will do what I say I will do. I'll spend more time in reading. I'll be a philosopher. So we want to be better. We have a genetic compulsion to be better. We want to be better today than we were yesterday. We want to be better tomorrow than we are today. We just want to be better. That's it. But that's half of it. The other half is I will help others be better. I'll be a volunteer. I'll be a mentor. I will join Surf Rider. I will be the light in the darkness. People write amazing words. And when I ask people to write their codes and then they text it to me, I say, I think I've got the best job in the world because I'm seeing the greatness of the human spirit. See these beautiful words and these beautiful statements, and they shared, and you create this wave of positive hope and purpose throughout that auditorium. And there's scientific basis behind what I do. It's called emotional contagion. When I went back to grad school, I went through the research, found research that I don't know why this research is not more prominently displayed. They call it the ripple effect. How about that? Drop a stone, create a ripple, build a wave. That's how I have reinterpreted it. But all of us have power through our emotions to influence the emotions and ultimately the behavior of others, called emotional contagion. But they thought it could only happen in a face-to-face interaction, in like a room, in like a team. They call it group dynamics, like how does the group interact? And then I found this amazing study that Facebook and the National Academy of Sciences had done, okay? They studied 689,000 people without them knowing, one of the biggest social studies in the history of the world. And they wanted to prove that emotional contagion could be transmitted virally through keystrokes. And they found it can. So when you look at this craziness of the world, the division in the world, I'll tell you, North Korea, Iran, China, Russia, they all read this study and they reacted to the study. And that's why this country has become so polarized, because we have this negative emotional wave that's impacting right throughout the world. So in my little way and my mission, I'm helping. Whenever time I speak to people, I'm giving it everything I've got. to try to reverse this negative trend. So how do I know I'm having an impact? I'll tell you this, David. And this is, I'm talking observation here. So when I start my presentations, so I might have 50 people, 100 people, 500 people, 5,000 people on a live stream or a personal interaction. I'm talking huge companies, huge, some of the hottest, biggest financial data companies in the world. I work for some of the best crew, and I'm stoked and I'm honored that they want me to speak to their team. I asked them right in the beginning, before I've said one word, text me a word that describes how you're feeling. And I build a word cloud on the fly. People text me a word, and on my PowerPoint screen, I build a word cloud. So if anyone's listening and they don't know what a word cloud is, it's like a representation of a visual representation of words that people send you, with the more frequent words, the more popular words being larger. So at a glance, you can see how people are feeling. You can see the big words. The big words are the most popular words. So I started it at COVID in March 20, because it was all live stream then, and I wanted to create interactivity. And the words were stress, anxiety, depression, and disconnection. I call it a sad mindset: stress, anxiety, depression. Then I tell my stories, 3 stories about courage and commitment, about perseverance and resilience. Then I tell a story about interpersonal connectivity. It's a very touching story. Everyone writes their code. 12 lines, every line begins with "out." Well, then people share their code through the web. And then I ask people, okay, text me a word that you're going to take home with you. Start point: stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. People hear the stories, write the code, share the code. 2 words: hope and purpose. In my heart, I've done my job well. And it all came from surfing.
So I know what it feels like to feel that inspired in the moment. The question is, how do you maintain it?
Exactly. How do you maintain it? After that, I have done my best, but I can't do anything more than activate, light the fire. And I hope that I'm hoping that that wave can keep going, and that people can be part of the wave. That's why it's drop a stone, create a ripple, build the wave. And the building the waves, the collective, and I'm just hoping people stick with it. I've had so many, I had a kid come up to me at this one event. He said, "Shaun, I saw you 10 years ago." And he pulls out his pocket. He says, "I live by the code." He pulls out a little Surface code card. It's all broken and cracked. He says, I live by the code, baby." This is what he said to me. And I get these letters from kids: "Thank you, it changed my life. I lost 80 pounds as a result of doing the code. My relationship with my child is better." I mean, they did an academic study on this famous university, Claremont Graduate University, the first university in the world to offer a graduate program in positive psychology, which I studied as well, which is, it's not the study of maladies, but it's the study of human enrichment, fulfillment, and high performance. It's about how you can live a better life through psychological precepts. And so they also said to me, "Shaun, you need to maintain the momentum. You need to maintain the impetus." But I'm one guy.
Yeah. But what's your method? I mean, despite me saying you radiate positivity, you certainly feel grief still.
Absolutely.
You know, you probably feel cynicism at times, but how do you not?
I do not feel cynicism at any time. Cynicism is banished from my soul. You know, what I do is authentic, 100% authentic. And people might, every now and then, there will be people, Sean, like they, it's not believing in what I do, but they, um, I don't know. I don't know. For me, I'm not cynical in any way, but maintaining the impetus is definitely a challenge. And I've worked on a couple of things, creating an app, maintaining this impetus. And it's a very big challenge for all of us in our lives, I think, to maintain that power, maintain that force, maintain that direction. But I wake up every morning, man. I'm ready to go. I've got the mojo. And like sometimes things will go sideways for me, like they go sideways for everyone in our lives. And I'm not, I want to show you this. Check this out. My wallet.
The surfer's code.
So I carried my wallet. So this is what I found, that, the words of amazing leaders, Mandela, Churchill, JFK, MLK, they certainly inspire us. But what I've seen in the hundreds of thousands of people I've worked with, that our own words, our words, are the words that can transform us. No one else's words. JFK's words are not going to transform you. Martin Luther King's words are not going to transform you. Winston Churchill's words are not going to transform you. But your own words, I think can help you make a change, be better, help others be better. And that's why I encourage people, write your code, keep your code, keep it. So for me, I keep it and it helps me. So I always paddle back out. I'll take the drop with commitment, thinking about getting into a new venture, just go for it. So I keep it close to me. Keep it close to me. My words give me power.
Well, I do want to talk about the revitalization of Instinct, the clothing brand, but let's start with the inception point. Tell me about the inception of Instinct back in 1979.
Yeah, so Instinct actually started a lot earlier.
Oh,
Well,
really?
the concept for Instinct started a lot earlier. So this is my dad. My dad was a classic dude. I had my first water shot in the newspaper of me surfing. It was the first time that I think the newspaper had ever published a water shot of a guy surfing in Durban, one of my local beaches. It was a great shot. My dad loved the picture. My dad and my stepmom, he cut all the pictures out in scrapbooks. I've still got all these old scrapbooks. It's amazing to look back at them. And this picture was taken in 1972, my last year before the army, my last year of school, of high school. So he went, I love this picture. So he took the picture along to a graphic artist. And he said, I want you to create a logo for my son that's going to go on his boards. How about this? 1972. I think there was one surfing logo in the world at that time, and I think it was like Hang 10, those
Right.
2 feet. Now he wants a logo for his son's board. I'm just a 16-year-old kid. So he has this artist create this logo, and he goes, son, this is going to go on every one of your boards. And I go, oh no, Dad, it's too big. I was quite a shy kid. No, Dad, it's too big. He goes, this is the deal. I pay for the boards. The logo's going on the boards. So that logo was on all my boards from 72 onwards. By the time I started doing well competitively and had my first big break in the 74-75 season in Hawaii, and I won the Hang 10, which was the biggest contest in the world. I was on the cover of all the surfing magazines with the logo on Surfer and Surfing World and all the tracks and all that with this logo. And then, so this logo was getting super famous. And in those days, if you were on the cover of Surfer or Surfing, it was like, that was like the thing, that was the biggest thing. And that was the biggest thing in surfing. So, I didn't really capitalize it. In those days, we used to make money. We used to have a surfboard model. Someone would
Mhm.
do your Shaun Tomson surfboards, and they pay you a royalty and do your particular design. My boards were all made by Spider Murphy. He was in South Africa, so it's kind of difficult. It wasn't really that much. Didn't seem to be much money coming in. And then in 1978, my cousin Michael started Gotcha. Uh, Michael was a terrific surfer. In 1976, he was #5 in the world. And Mike and I were super competitive. Mike and I started surfing on the same day. We always tried to catch more waves than each other. We always competed against each other hard in the contest. And every day after school, we were at different schools. My dad, if the surf was good, he'd pick me up, and then he'd pick Mike up, and we'd go surfing together. Every family holiday was with Mike. Mike would come with us. He was almost like my brother. I mean, I had my brother Paul, and but Mike was like a year older than me. So like the whole family, like Mike was part of the family. And he'd stay at my place over the weekends. We'd be, down at the beach at 4:30 in the morning, first guys out. So he started Gotcha, and I went, shh, he's going to start a company. I'm going to start a company too. And I've already got a logo. I already have a logo that's world famous. So I started Instinct. And how did I think of Instinct? So I'm having ear surgery. Was I having ear surgery? Anyway, I thought, like, what really represents surfing, like the essence. And I had two names I loved. I loved Rhythm, and I loved Instinct. Rhythm was owned by one of the most famous athletes in South Africa, a guy called Gary Player, a famous golfer. So Rhythm was out. And then I loved Instinct because, tube riding and riding inside the tube, and just tube riding differently was sort of my thing. And the best tubes happen when you're operating on instinct. And you ask any surfer, what's the best moment in surfing? They'll all say riding inside the tubes. They're like, instinct was perfect. And then I had the logo with it. And that's how I started. So it came from a very pure place. And I tell young entrepreneurs, like I'm going to speak to a group of them in a couple of days. I said, you're going to choose a name. Don't just be like lazy and choose your last name. Choose a name that connects with your passion and connects to the essence of what you're trying to create. So that's how it happened. It's very, very soulful, very pure, very authentic. And it's wonderful to have that sort of base from which the roots can grow.
Yeah.
So I started the company, had some partners, company grew. Um, It grew quite fast. And I would say in the mid 80s, before Billabong hit here in the United States, we were solid 3 in the core market. Quick was #1, Gotcha #2. We were #3, had an amazing surf team, and I was sponsoring Tom Carroll, Barton Lynch, Dave Palmer, Greg Anderson. I mean, just all these amazing, Michael Benes, all these amazing, amazing surfers. And then when I retired from the tour in 1990, I sold to my partners. We had a dispute, the general thing that can happen in apparel. We had a dispute. I sold, and then company went on for only about 2 more years. I said to my partners, you will see what will happen. The company will be gone in 2 years. I had a NDA. I remember I couldn't talk about it at the time. So the company disappeared after a few years. And then ultimately I reacquired it a number of years back. My wife and I reacquired it, and we hadn't done anything with it. And then when I saw all the disruption in the industry, and I thought, wow, maybe there's a place for a brand that's built on authenticity, that's built on soul, that has a real person behind it. maybe there's a place for it. So we got our first product into the market in about March. It's been in the market for a couple of months. We got about 100 shops at the moment, and we're just building it slowly. And certainly there's lots of competition out there. There's lots of very, very well funded brands. But let me tell you, there's not that many brands left that are owner operated. Very few. I think of Whistler, Paul Nordie. I mean, Bob Hurley, I think of with Florence. I mean, they obviously, Bob Hurley's been very successful. They're very well funded. We scrappy. We've got our base down in Carlsbad. We've got a partnership going with a great crew down there. I'm back in the fray, back in the mix there, and trying to balance it with what I do with my mission to create a positive wave. And I found that they are absolutely totally compatible. So
Yeah.
every time I speak at a school or a university or a large corporation, I tell them the story of Instinct, and I tell them why I'm back in the market, that I want to use Instinct as the world's first social purpose surfwear brand to spread a wave of hope and purpose around the world. And yes, sustainability is really important, and it's important to have sustainable, but I mean, I've been involved in the sustainability movement. I was Surf Riders' first ambassador, first Pro Surfer member, wrote the copy for their first ad back in 1984. So sustainability is part of me. I don't need to go out and wave a sustainability flag because it's part of me. And the focus is certainly on using Instinct to inspire and empower people.
When you sold your share, you said you had that dispute when you sold your shares of Instinct.
Yeah.
I'm curious now with hindsight if you think that was reconcilable at all, or was getting out of the partnership the only option?
Yeah, it wasn't. And also, it was a time of great change for me. You can imagine I've been on the tour for like 16 years. Suddenly I'm off the tour. I'm back in South Africa. I actually went back to university. I had 3 credits outstanding. So here I am doing my final year of university, studying business finance. It was such a mind bender. And the day I went home to tell my wife, listen, I'm out of Instinct, she said, I'm pregnant. So yeah, so it was a time of big change. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. You guys both had big news that day.
Yeah, big news. Sure.
Um,
But, I love the fact now that that I think today, small is beautiful. I think keep Instinct small, tight, authentic, and really focused on the social purpose. Create this wave of hope and purpose around the world, this wave of positivity, inspire young people. And every garment's got the Surface code card on the hang tag, and there's a little QR code on the back where people can go and download a worksheet and they can write their own code. So it's very, I think it has a different philosophy.
okay.
It's not hipster groovy. I was never part of that tribe. Not to say there's anything wrong with hipster groovy, but it's not me. And I just always think back, where did it come from? It came from mom and dad, came from the tube, came from a pure place. And I want to maintain that purity and not have something that, I guess, someone sends me a picture of one of those famous heritage brands, and they're in Target and they're making plastic blow up swimming pools. I'm going,
Yeah.
what's happening, man? It's like gee, is
Yeah.
like, where's the line in the sand there? It's like, okay, you've taken it over. You want to generate money, as much money as you can from this, but yes, plastic swimming pools. Yeah, I mean, I know wave pools are hot, but not that wave pool.
Yeah. Do you still have the original photo that inspired the logo?
I've got the original photo. I've got the original newspaper article.
Good for you.
It's unbelievable. I've got it in the scrapbook with the date.
Good for you.
Classic.
Um, how actively do you follow the WSL? It seems like you're really tuned in.
Tuned in.
Yeah.
The Margaret River, the time is crap, so I have to
Yeah.
catch up. I have to catch up. I can't watch it live, but I love to watch it live. I love the fact that Geordie Smith's making this huge charge. I think he's going to be, by the end of Margaret's, I think he's going to be number one. So it's great to see his father and mother also profound influences on his surfing, massive influence. And now he is been riding his dad's boards for a couple of years. So this is one thing guys don't realize, and I'll tell you this. When you're surfing at that elite level and you have a relationship with a shaper for years, and then you sever that relationship and you have to start going on something new, it takes a long, long, long time. It's super hard to move to another shaper. It's very, very hard. And it's taken Geordie with his dad a few years, but I mean, he's definitely in the groove right now. And when you have that great board under your feet, you've got the commitment, you've got the confidence, you've got that commitment and that confidence. And that is very, very fragile. It is so easy to suddenly get hooked up into that downward spiral, where, oh, I need to get another board and, oh, the board, it's not going so good. But I need to get another board. And then suddenly, you're confused and spiraling down. And I remember Geordie, when he first came onto the tour and the whole world wanted him to ride for them. I remember I wrote an article about him and I called it Man on Fire. And it was about how Geordie's in a big hurry. And I walked into his room. I think he must have had 30 or 40 boards in there from all the top shapers on the planet. And I'm going, wow, how confusing is this for a younger? Everyone wanted to have Geordie riding it. And I think for a long time he was in a hurry, but now he's calm, he's fluid. You see in the heats, the way he surfs, there's nothing hurried. He has these incredible reserves of power and fluidity and flow, but he's got the confidence, got the commitment, he's got the right board. It's hard. And in our day, it was really hard to get, especially to duplicate great boards because
Yeah.
you didn't have the machine. So today, and I think that's had a fundamental evolution on the quality of boards and ultimately the quality of surfing. Guys can take 3 boards with them and 6 boards or whatever they take. I mean, they take massive, or even get a board. You're in France, you get a board off the machine in France. You're in Australia, you get the board off the machine in
Yeah.
Australia. So there is that consistency, but it was very hard to find the magic boards.
Well, to bolster your point, when you look at multiple time world champs, they're all with the same shaper for a decade plus. Obviously, Kelly with Al, all 11 titles were won on those boards. Steph Gilmore with DHD, Carissa with Mayhem, um,
Stephanie Gilmore,
Steph, yeah, with DH, Gabriel
Fanny,
Medina with Johnny
Fanny,
Cabianca,
yeah.
Felipe Toledo with Sharp Eye, John with Paizel. They're all like lifers with a particular brand because it really, I think, takes that long to like fine tune.
It gives you so much confidence to have that. to have that great shaper.
And even though Jordy's only been riding his dad's boards the recent years, he had a long history prior of riding his dad's boards. So that relationship has been intact all that time, even if he wasn't on those boards consecutively through those
Yeah.
years.
But he's
So,
really, I think he's really got in the groove, and um, the confidence level is there. You know, I saw him surf small waves at the pipeline at the pipeline contest, and I phoned up Garth Tyler. So he had not had such a good year last year, didn't make the final five. And I said to Garth, he was riding at Pupa K, I think. I said, hey Garth, Jordy is looking unbelievable. His surfing is unbelievable. Then he didn't have such a good heat at Masters, and then you know, after El Salvador he started to really cook. But you could see how much difference it is when you have that like super sled under your feet.
yeah, absolutely. How are you doing on time, by the way? Do you have to get off?
I'm good. I haven't got anything going on.
Okay, good. Um, just one more question on the world tour, just because you've seen so many different iterations of it. Um, from my knowledge, I don't think any of those iterations have actually been financially viable or profitable. Um, why not? What do you think the big unlock would be for the current iteration, the WSL, to kind of figure out the equation?
So it's funny. So I look back to when I won the world title in 1977. 78, I didn't have such a good year, but I was a world champion. I thought, wow, all the sponsorship dollars are going to roll in. I'm going to be like Nicky Lauda. I'm going to be like James Hunt. I'm going to put surfing on the map. It's going to be like, had like the hottest agent in the United States. Nothing happened. I was so bummed out. I went, stuff this. I'm bailing out of pro surfing. There's no future for me in no future for me. And this agent said, hey, Shaun, man, Hollywood's waiting for you. Hollywood's waiting for you. But you got to enroll in acting school. So 79, January, bail out of South Africa, hook up with, and I'm studying acting. I'm studying at an acting school for 3 months here in Hollywood. I'm just spinning out. I can't handle it. Just don't dig it. And I go, this is it. I'm out. Grab my board, jump back on the pro tour, and I went back on the pro tour with a realization that surfing will always be this niche sport. Surfing will never ever advance into the mainstream because the mainstream is closed. You've got to have a ball, you've got to have a bat. Surfing is not a field. It will never go beyond niche. But for me then, I went, it's okay. I can still make a great life. And today, I think the WSL has realized there's only one constituency, and that is surfers. There's 23 million surfers at the wildest, best estimate around the world. So that's a big enough market to have a niche market and then have this webcast that is purely focused on the hardcore surfer. And the sponsorship dollars are flowing in the same way that dollars flowed into the big surfing companies during the glory days, and they're not coming in from surfers. But that's okay, because what surfing represents to the mass, which is what the sponsorship dollars are coming in from, is risk, uncertainty, glamour, sharks, fear. And that's what I talk about when I speak at these large corporations. They don't know me from a bar of soap. They don't know who Shaun Tomson is. Just like they don't know who Kelly Slater is, or Laird Hamilton, or Bethany Hamilton. Maybe they know Bethany Hamilton, the young girl that got her arm bitten off by a shark. But other than that, surfing has this allure, this mystery. So today, I think WSL has come to that realization over the last few years, and they've built a pretty cool business model. And I think the business model with this focus can be profitable. So the way they've structured it now going back to a calendar year, ending at pipeline. Every heat is a sudden death heat. There's no more final five. I think is a representation of the dream that we had in 1977 when the tour started at Burley Heads. Wow, man on man, sudden death, 10-point scale, contest and amazing surf. It's sort of finally, it's finally up and rolling, and I think it's a viable business plan.
Okay, good. Um, do you watch 100-Foot Wave
I
on
watched the
HBO?
Cortez. I watched the Cortez. I watched the Cortez Bank sequence and loved it. I thought it was great. It's so funny. How about this? So after after we made Bustin' Down the Door, and people really liked the movie, and it was successful. I said to my partner and the director, Jeremy, "Hey Jeremy, we got to make a we got to make a we got to make a series, a TV series about these guys that are riding these huge waves, and we're going to call it Hellmen." So we went to TNT. We've got a budget, and they said, "Okay, we want you guys to shoot a." This was 12 years ago. "We want you guys to shoot a 12-minute pilot. We'll give you $600,000. Shoot 12 minutes." So we got some surfers on board. One of them was Garrett. We got the helicopters hired, and we got the last day of the year at Mavericks. And I'm waiting for Garrett to sign the contract. We did this interview with him, got this amazing interview with Garrett. He said, "Garrett, what about the 100-foot wave?" He said, "I'm not interested in the 100-foot wave. It's got to be at least 120. I mean, he just came across amazing on this thing. So Garrett said, "No, I can't sign it. I've already got to deal with another producer." So we have to phone him and say, "Listen, Garrett's dropped out, but we've got someone else." They went, "No, we want Garrett." So we had to cancel the whole thing. And this was like 12, even more, 15 years ago. Hellman, isn't that a classic?
Wow.
So Jeremy and I saw that. We saw that there would be this allure and the simplicity of guys and girls putting it all on the line to ride the biggest wave. Because there's so much ego associated with that. It's like a different sport. It's different to what we were focused on.
Yeah. But to your point about the things that resonate with the in your public speaking work and what the WSL has figured out, I 100-Foot Wave has transitioned over to the mainstream where I feel like there's almost more non-surfers watching the show than there are surfers. And I published an interview with Garrett last week and one of the producers on the show, and they both said that they made a decision early on to put very little surfing in the show. They're like, the biggest wave and the biggest wipeouts are the only clips we're really going to play. And now they do a little bit more than that, but it's really not about, it's about all the human interest stuff,
It's about the
basically.
character, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Certain movies, most of them are so crap. I mean, you can't watch them. It's just wave after wave after wave. It's so
Yeah,
black and white. That's why you watch Bustin' Down the Door. Bustin' Down the Door is about character. And
totally.
we wanted to do it the same way when we looked at Hellman. And Garrett is a terrific character. He's just like, there's no filter. He's just a great character. And I would say that definitely, if you look at the percentage of surfers that watch WSL and the percentage of surfers that watch the 100 wave, I would say it's a minuscule percentage. Most of them are not going to watch that show. I would say that there's probably 95% of their audience is like mainstream because
Yeah.
it's good for mainstream, and it's something that's super simple to understand. It's like who's going to climb the highest mountain in the world? Or it has a sort of a singular, like macho risk, danger, focus, and then how these characters deal with this interactivity. And like the whole thing with that guy Andrew Cotton and Garrett at Cortez Bank, and he couldn't get Garrett onto the wave he wanted, and the drama. It was like it's so sort of revealing of character. And for me, I thought it was super well done, and it's pretty fascinating look at character.
I love it. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. But you're right. I'd ask you if you've seen it. You're like, oh, I saw one episode. I ask other surfers if they've seen it. They're like, I'll get around to it. But I have family, extended family, who doesn't surf, but they know I'm into surfing, and they reach out to me and they're like, I'm watching this show on HBO. Have you heard of it? And
Yeah.
they're loving it.
Until that show came out, people would would say to me, "Have you surfed Pipeline?" Or "Have you surfed that wave in Northern California?" And now it's, "Have you surfed Nazare?" Uh, it has really captured the consciousness of sort of the non-surfer, unlike I think anything before.
Yeah.
I don't know how successful it is. I'm assuming it's successful. If it's on HBO and it's been renewed for a number of seasons, I'm assuming it's very successful.
Yeah, it is. Um, Transitioning into kind of wrap up questions. Can you identify the best surfing that you've ever seen?
Um, I don't know how many years ago it was. It was John at Margaret River during a WSL event. He he'd got it down with the boards. Looked like he'd moved the wide point up, flattened out the rocker. So his boards were just so beautifully suited to carving. And that was, for me, like carving that's what defines you as a surfer. That's your character. That's who you are. And that beautiful surfing on those big rights at Margaret River was really, for me, that was like one of the best. And I mean, I wasn't there in person, but just watching it on video was really, I think was really incredible. That was maybe one of the best few heats I had ever seen.
I think he kind of redefined how that spot is surfed. Back in the day, it was everybody was going left. And then in the last decade, we saw people taking advantage of the right, but it wasn't until then that it was like a high performance right. It
Yeah,
felt like people were trying to survive, but then him kind of connecting the rail on a double overhead wave, like the entirety of the face was a shifting point.
and then there was some surfing of Kelly's backside. I don't know whether it was Fiji. I think it was a cloud break that was inhuman as well. Um, yeah, I mean, I love the I love the way that Kelly carved on those Channel Island sports. The polyurethane relative to the epoxy, it just has different flex characteristics, and he could apply maximum power then when with epoxy it's easy to overpower that board, and the surfing that he was doing then was just so amazing. He was the first surfer to really, Mike Stewart for me was like the guy that this would have been in like 80 or 81 when he was riding his bodyboard Pipe, and he was the first guy that actually jammed and took off like under the lip. And we couldn't do it, our boards were too long. We just didn't have that technique. And then Kelly was the first guy that took that and took it to Pipe, and was the first guy that I saw drop under the lip backside. And then his surfing you know, at Cloudbreak and Tabarua, it's just mind blowing. So,
Mm.
so, so complex. And he also had this ability to really sort of maintain this focus, like a tornado was around him, but he maintained this focus and quietness and sort of aura of placid calmness. It's very rare. He could really remain sort of in that present state, in that flow state, and really operate on instinct. It was, okay, I'm using the word instinct, but it really, you see it in, that amazing flexibility of in his surfing, and flexibility in his physique, and the lack of fear.
Seems to thrive actually
Yeah,
with those things.
I thrive on getting that last wave at the last moment. Thrive on that.
Um, I'll bring this up just because it relates to you in two ways. It takes place at J Bay and features Dave Parmenter, who you mentioned being a part of the Instinct team. But I asked Sam George the same question about what's the best surfing you've ever seen, and he talked about one wave that Dave got out at J Bay on the Widowmaker setup, but kind of sitting well beyond where anybody else was sitting, and then taking off on a what looked like a nothing wave, but then connecting it all the way through and hitting high lines and like with a certain amount of speed that he just did not think was possible. And Dave just put it together like it was no problem.
Yeah, Dave is such an amazing guy, and I want to show you something. I've got this incredible ad or two ads with Dave Parmenter. One of them, he's standing in a shaping bay. And then another one, he's doing a big bottom turn, and it goes, "This is why." Dave doing a big, but this is why. And if there's if that is sort of it's a good ad. Dave represents so much that's good in surfing, and so much that's thoughtful and philosophical. To have that, this is why, aligned with him is pretty cool.
Have you kept in contact with him?
I haven't. I had him write a piece for the Bustin Down the Door book when I did it with the movie. So that was a number of years ago. But I haven't kept in touch with him, and I always thought he was the greatest guy,
Yeah,
and
me
definitely
too.
one of the greatest writers in surfing.
What do you do dietary and exercise wise to maintain your surfing?
Yes, we keep a good diet here. My wife's a great cook, so we just eat basics. A lot of fish, bit of meat. Um, And then I have to do these bloody exercises every morning. I'll tell you what, like I said, after 64, the pop-up becomes a lot more difficult. And that's something that you never ever think, I never ever thought about how it would ever be a challenge to blast to your feet. But that becomes a sort of a fundamental challenge as you get older. And of course, if you don't blast up, you kind of mess the whole wave up. You messed up the whole rhythm. So I do flexibility exercises and strength exercises. I seldom drink. I've never used drugs ever in my entire life. Never smoked a cigarette. Um, so I'm pretty sensible about what I do.
Good. What are there any spots that you still want to travel to?
The I don't want. I have no more interest in life-threatening waves. No more interest. I mean, I like no matter what, I would always, would always go out there no matter what. In our day, there was no segmentation of what you did by wave size. You weren't like a big wave rider or competitor. You just rode everything. And when Waimea was on, we'd ride Waimea. When it was outside Park, we'd ride outside Park. We rode whatever there was to be rode. There was no differentiation. There was no specialization. Um, but no more life threatening stuff. I mean, maybe a cool spot like like Seychelles or Maldives or someone where the water's warm, it's not particularly crowded, and I can get some good waves, and maybe there's a little barrel section where I can tuck in and pull in. But I'll tell you what, I did go up to Kelly's Slater's wave pool. A friend of mine was celebrating his 70th, and I had a lot of fun up there.
Did you?
Yeah, a lot of fun. I got one barrel, and I had a few barrels, but one barrel I just got whacked. Whacked. It was like being banged on the reef at backdoor, but it was a good experience. It's okay. It's not the same, but it's different. It's like a different. It's like, and I don't think there's any way that you can bag on it. It's just different, but it's super cool. And yeah, I had a great time. Great there. You got a lot of friends, and you hang out. And so the first time I surfed at the wave pool, they had an event, it was a number of years back, called the Founders Cup. So they invited the founders of pro surfing, Rabbit and MR, myself, PT, Ian, and they have us up to the wave pool. So now Rabbit and MR had got there before me. They'd had a couple of goes. So now they send us out. So it's me, MR, and Rabbit, the three of us paddle out there. And you've got the 16 best surfers in the world, the 8 guys and the 8 gals, and they're all lined up there. And I can see they're all watching us. You know what I mean? And the first wave is left, because you're riding towards the kind of ranch seating area there. So I know they're all going to be watching there, because as you're paddling out, I see them there. So the first waves are left. Now MR and Rabbit have ridden there. I haven't ridden there. So I say to MR, you want the first one? He goes, I'm not effing going left. I go, okay, take your bags. You want it? He goes, I'm not effing going left either. I go, okay. And I paddle into the wave. I reckon that's the most pressure I've ever felt, paddling into a wave. Ever. Because I'd seen guys miss the waves. I'd seen guys over the front, because it's tricky. So I got to my feet, and then I just managed to blast it. And then I got taken out at the end section, but I did okay. I didn't embarrass myself, but it was great.
I surfed it in 2018, right after you guys, I feel. And I had seen that day, and you're right. I don't know who it was, but somebody missed a wave just paddling for it.
Yeah.
And
MR, I saw MR miss a wave. I saw Martin Potter miss a wave.
it was Martin. Okay, so it was Potter that I was thinking of. And I was like, that added so much pressure to me in my day, because I'm like, if these guys are missing waves and blowing it, what am I going to do? But it is just nerves, really. Once you kind of shake the nerves,
Yeah.
you can settle in.
But also you hear that thing go, and that the way that you're like coming to you in 10 seconds, it certainly adds this dimension of pressure. But I think it's going to really I think it's going to be good for surfing. I definitely don't think there's any negatives associated with it. For me, I look at it as just like it's another surf spot, and it's not going to defile the soul of surfing. It's a different experience. It's another surf spot, but it's a good surf spot, and it's a fun surf spot. Talking about Martin Potter, to me, that's one of the greatest surfers of all time.
Mm.
I think his contribution to surfing has been grossly overlooked. He was the first guy, there have been these fundamental turning points in surfing. And let me tell you, Martin Potter, fundamental turning point. He started the whole power and release, the aerial revolution. You can look back to that one guy. Okay, there's Kevin Reed did an aerial before him in Santa Cruz, or maybe this guy. Martin Potter used it functionally. I remember standing on the beach with Tom Carroll, who I was sponsoring then, and must have been like 81, maybe 82. And I saw Martin Potter on a Glen Manami board, must have been 6'6", blasting down at Rocky Point, hit this turn and blast into the sky. Tom Carroll and I had never, ever seen it before, but perfectly fluidly, functionally land, and kept going like nothing had happened. So this whole concept of power and release is the foundation of the air movement. Okay, I'm not an aerial guy, but when you watch it hit the turn, they flatten it out on the concave and they run it out and then they blast and they take off. So Martin Potter was the first guy to understand that and the first guy to do it, both with power, speed, aggression, and style too. And I love the guy surfing. And I don't know, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, no, that's great. My final thought on wave pools. Andrew Kidman pointed this out to me, and I had not considered it, but he was saying it's restored the kind of like Glenn Henning was saying, that restored the early Stoke that used to exist in surfing, where when you go into the ocean, it's you're battling it out, it's a finite resource, but in the pool, you take turns. It's already mandated. And so when you see somebody paddling, you start cheering for them. And if they do pretty good or better than they did before, you're like, yeah, good job high-fiving, you know? So it's restored the original kind of Stoke that existed in the ocean.
Absolutely. I was in Chicago a few years back. I was doing an event for Northwestern Kellogg at Northwestern. It's a big business school. And as I was flying in for the first time, no, it wasn't Chicago, it was Milwaukee. I was speaking at a financial conference. So I was flying in and I went, wow, I didn't realize this lake was so huge. It's like a sea. It was Lake Michigan. So as I land, I look up and I go Surf Shop Milwaukee. And there's a shop called Lake Effect Surf Shop. So I immediately phone the guy up and I go, uh, hi there, it's Shaun Tomson here. And the guy goes, F you. I'm going, no, it is. It's Shaun Tomson. So I've just come to town. I've got a financial conference in the afternoon tomorrow. But maybe we can get the surfers together. I'll buy them all pizza and we can just have a good evening at your shop. And we go around to your shop. We have a good evening. And when I'm there, he says, hey, Shaun, there's going to be some surf tomorrow. The surf's going to be up. This is like fall. So it's not like bitter. So I haven't got a wear. So now I'll lend you a wetsuit board. So I suit up, I've got the full hood on, gloves, the whole business. And the surf's like 3 feet small. And there's about 30 guys. We all run down to the beach together, screaming and shouting like Ride the Wild Surf. And we all out there and we dropping it in each other and we riding waves together. It was such a stoking experience. And it sort of restores your faith in the Stoke. And then you're right, Andrew's right. When you go to the wave pool, everyone is stoked. Like when you go to Kelly's wave pool, everyone's sort of living in these airstreams and everyone's eating together and you go out there and you've got your schedule and you know when to take off. There's massive stoke. And I got to tell you, the beach where I grew up, Bay of Plenty, we had a jetty, long jetty that went out. We had these unbelievable sand barrels. At the time, longest tube ride in the world was at the Bay of Plenty. When Bay of Plenty was good, 15-second tube ride. It was like where I developed my whole tube riding technique, incredible barrels. But we had a pack of about 15 guys, some of the hottest surfers in the world, amazing surfers. And you paddle out of the Bay of Plenty, you went to the back of the line. And if you jumped a line, guys would give you an automatic flat hand. It was strict rules. If a guy was sitting waiting and you wanted to go further up, you'd have to paddle up to him and go and ask permission. Say, listen, I just want to paddle on your inside, but I know it's your wave next. So everyone was very civilized and everyone had their wave. And often, like, I'll be sitting up the point at my local break here and by myself sometimes. Yes. The guy paddle up and you paddle past me and you'll sit 10 feet on the inside. And I go, I always say something. I will always say something. I go, hey, it's not on. I'm waiting for the wave. The next wave is going to come. It's not yours. Just wait your turn like a gentleman. It's simple. We all have a great time. It's just me and you out here. Don't do that. So
How do they respond?
I would say 50% of the time it's aggro. 50% of the time it's, oh, okay, no, I understand. You see, it's not taught from the beginning. It's just it needs to be more inculcated into people. It just wait your turn. Like you're a hotshot pro, you're paddling out to break it in, just paddle around everyone. And I've had my beefs in the water over the years, but I'll tell you what, for me, you paddle up to where the takeoff point is, and if there's someone waiting there, you wait your turn up there. It's just the way the way it rolls. And if I'm sitting waiting and a person paddles around me and the next wave comes, I will drop in. I
Yeah.
hate dropping. Pro surfers or good surfers hate dropping because it forces you to be on the shoulder. But sometimes you have to make a stand, and if a guy just deliberately paddles around you through greed, you gotta you got to you got to go. And and sometimes it's going to lead to beef, or it's going to lead to unpleasantness. And I try to I tell myself, hey, Shaun, just let it go, let it go, let it go. Just wait for the next one. There'll always be another wave. But sometimes you just can't bloody help yourself. Hey, how come a guy just do this to me? You got to say something.
I like that you confront it head on. I think the 50% that you're talking about, there's 50% of the people who are just going to scratch tooth and nail to get theirs. The other 50% is just cluelessness.
Obliviousness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so you just being able to verbalize it might just clue them in of like they were unaware and now they're aware and they know that there is an etiquette now that nobody taught them, you know?
Classic.
Um, I was thinking something else. You sparked another thought, but I can't access it now. Um, anyway, final question for everybody is just whose boards are you riding nowadays?
So I love Elmeric Sports, Channel Islands. I've been riding them for so long, and they're in town here. So I primarily I ride Channel Islands. But I'll tell you what, when it's 2 foot, and that's often in summer here up in Santa Barbara, they also made a softie. Channel Islands made a softie. I have such fun on a little softie when it's 2 feet. But generally, my board's between 6'1" and 7'0". I ride progressive designs. I ride either the Warp or the Code. They're both two models I've had with Channel Islands for a long, long time. Wide point a little bit up, flatter entry, but a board that you can surf well on. And I love what they've done. They're now a team owned company. All the guys that work there own the company, so it's just wonderful. Brit plays a fundamental role. They've got a great CEO, Scott Anderson. I love connecting with those guys.
I know you're somebody who still rides pointy thrusters. I feel like I've never seen you on a longboard, never seen you on a mid length, never seen you on a fish, I don't think.
I had a mid length. I tried it out. There's a guy, Devin Howard, who's a big mid-length guy. I tried one out, but found out I caught rails a bit up in the front forward section, which was it's sort of a different type of surfing. He stands right in the tail, and he's a really good surfer. Um, but I'm pretty much set on my I like my short boards, yeah.
Yeah, good. Stick with it.
Okay, so I got to tell you this, David. So we're doing a whole series of showings of Bustin down the door. I'm actually starting on May the 29th on the East Coast in a place called Asbury Park, where Bruce Springsteen's from. And then we're doing a series of about 7 showings in Southern Cal. And we're ending up at Bird's Surf Shed in San Diego. La Paloma, we're showing at the stands. So we're just showing at different venues. But it's going to be great to have Rabbit here, and we need to be doing Q&A afterwards. So, I encourage your audience, if they want to see the movie and come and hear some interesting inside information about the movie, come along. You can just go to Bustin Down the Door Film, bustindownthedoorfilm.com. So bustindownthedoorfilm.com. All the dates are on there. It's going to be really fun. The guys are all great conversationists. Rabbit's amazing. Ian Cairns is just incredible. PT, and it's really fun. And like I told you earlier, that when I ask people, give me a word that describes how you're feeling, stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. Disconnection's a big one. They did the big Gallup study, 1.2 million disengagement, 70% of Americans are disengaged. Surf movies are a way to bring people together. And I saw my first surf movie, I think in 1966. And I remember I was there with my dad and my cousin and my brother. And it was amazing. You see all the surfers in the town there. So it's very rare when you have these movies and the tribe gathers and the tribe gets together, and it's super cool. So I'm hoping that if you're listening, make an effort and come along, be part of the tribe again. And we all get in that darkened theater and see some amazing waves in Hawaii and hear some great stories. Come along. I'm hoping you can.
The tour also stops in Seal Beach at the Bay Theater.
Yeah, we've got the Bay Theater, which will be amazing. The Rivian, there's actually at the Rivian Theater, it's free on June the 14th. All the
Oh,
other shows, the money goes towards Surf Rider. Um,
well, the Bay Theater in Seal Beach is right. I bought my very first surf video at Harbor Surfboards right across the street when
right
I was
across the
14
street, I
when I was
know.
14 years old. And the
Right.
Bay's been closed for 20 years at least. And so they've just revitalized it and started screening stuff there. And so it's an incredible venue. All the venues actually on your guys' tour.
June
Beautiful.
12th, that's June the 12th, we're doing the Bay. It's going to be really, really fun. And the in-flight store just down the road is really
Yeah,
supporting. It's just going to be a super good vibe. Bring people together in this divided, broken, turbulent world. These surf movies are super, super special.
I love it. All right. Thank you, Shaun.
David, really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and it's great what you do. You bring people together.
Man,
Thank
thanks for sharing so candidly.
Take care. Cheers.
All right, bye.
Surf Splendor.